welcome to another episode of Plot Twist. I am your host, Eliana Perez-Jansen. It's been a while, couple of weeks, don't mind that. This is called Plot Twist anymore, so just keeping you guys on your toes. But today I have a doozy of an episode for you. I have one of my personal heroes in the film industry, Matt Kennedy, on, and we talk about everything film industry related, photography related, what it's like to have your work hanging up at the Smithsonian Institute, what it's like having Oscar-winning DPs compliment your work. This is going to be a really, really awesome episode for all the film fans, whether you're a Marvel fan or a Star Wars fan. This man has shot it all. You've seen his work on billboards. Hell, you've probably seen it everywhere because, you know, Hollywood, Marvel, Star Wars, big names, right? But go ahead and grab some popcorn, grab a beer, hang out, sit down, and listen to my episode with Matt Kennedy, starting right now. Hey everybody, this is Eliana Perez-Jansen on our fourth episode of Plot Twist. Was on a mild hiatus because Plot Twist, my almost 2-year-old, got sick, so we had 3 weeks of no podcast, but that is what plot twists are by nature. Today we have an amazing guest, Matt Kennedy, who is kind of one of my mentors and somebody I really look up to in the movie industry. Matt, go ahead and introduce yourself, and first question straight off the bat, what is your favorite color?
Oh, favorite color? Well, first, I'm Matt Kennedy. Favorite color is black, probably. I know it's not an actual color, but
fair enough. I mean, we wear it enough. We got us
Yes.
still photographers have to blend into the background.
For sure.
So just for everybody listening who doesn't know what a still photographer is, it is what I was before I retired from the film industry. We are in charge of creating all the images that are used after the fact for posters, promotional purposes, distribution, all that fun stuff. And we also do other certain things such as take a picture of if an actor's looking at a picture in a movie, we got to take that picture. So sometimes it falls to us. So still photography is one of those gigs on set that I feel like nobody has no idea it even exists. Have you, how has that kind of been?
I think that's a fair assessment. Most people, don't know that that's an actual job position on a movie set, which is great by me. The less people that are interested in it, the better. It's kind of oversaturated as it is.
Very true.
Yeah, it's a very unique position. You know, the closest thing I can equate it to would be like a photojournalist on a film set or a TV set. You know, you're covering the entire process for archival purposes. You know, like you said, marketing, publicity, behind the scenes. There's so many different things to photograph.
Now, you started your journey in camera department. You started off as a film loader, which tells me you've been in the game for a minute because we don't shoot much on film anymore.
No, I'm probably aging myself, but I started in 1997.
Wow. And so that is like almost golden age of like...
Yeah, it's like close to 27 years, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen it grow from that to what it is today. What are your favorite things
for
about
good
it?
and bad? Yeah,
Yes,
for the good and the bad.
Exactly. So what's your favorite pro and your favorite con that you've seen change from the industry from then until now?
I guess the favorite would probably be shooting digital for stills.
Fair.
Film is great, and I know it's kind of made a comeback. It's very trendy with like younger people. But it's just, I don't know. Digital is just so much easier. Maybe that's just because I've been used to that workflow for the last 15 plus years. But I would say in my experience, the industry has not gotten better. I feel like it's gotten worse. It's not fun anymore. It used to be a lot of fun when I started.
I feel like it was the creativity was a little bit different. It was more... not original. I mean, you still have your tropes and, you know, your certain things, but the creativity level, you know, you didn't have a green screen to, you know, come up with whatever you want. You had to make it happen and make it like use your brain to figure out how to represent all these things. But now, you know, it's digital in the bad way where you could just throw it up on a screen and all of a sudden you're on Mars instead of having a location that you find and do that type of aspect of it.
Yeah, that's changed for certain films. I mean, depending on the type of project and the budget, obviously,
Yes.
kind of dictates whether it's locations or green screen or even LED wall like the volume.
Yep.
Once again, that's all budget driven. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's funny that I mean, it's still fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy
Right.
my job. I love being on set. It's my second home. I like most of the people I work with. It's just different now. But the funny thing is, if you talk to the old guys when I was getting in, they would say the exact same thing. Oh, you
Yeah.
don't want to do this, kid. It was way better in the 80s and the
Yeah.
70s, and it shifts every 10 years, it changes.
Yep.
Um, but now I would say more than ever, it's certainly not run by creative people. It's run by
Yeah.
corporations,
And
like so many
numbers.
other things.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just a numbers game in every aspect of the industry. Yeah.
And you've worked on some pretty high profile things in terms of you've done the new Obi-Wan series,
Hmm.
which you're in something that was created in kind of like, let's say call it the golden era of like, the original Star Wars films. And now we're here and we're doing the Obi-Wan and it's a continuation. So you have those throwbacks and whatnot, but talk about those like bigger scale projects that already have like a built-in world and you're bringing it back to life. Do you feel when you're on set, do you kind of like get that nostalgia feel, or is it just kind of another set because it's just so much different than, the movies that you saw when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a sense of nostalgia. I was really excited to do Kenobi just because I'm a huge Darth Vader fan and
Fair.
I knew he was going to be in it a lot. So that, and from a photographer standpoint, visually, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, the series, I'm not going to, say whether it was good or bad, but
That's half of the stuff when we do our work. By the way, for anybody
oh,
watching, whenever we work in the
yeah,
film industry, just because we are proud of the work we do, I will say it because I don't have NDAs with big companies. Sometimes the work ain't great on a whole, but not saying
yeah,
that this one was that. But a lot of people, when you see, they're like, "Oh, well, you've done this movie. Like, are like, is it? It's like it didn't do great, or it did do great." And it's just like, "Hey, we did our job, and we did the best we could on a
yeah,
set." And it's like
sure.
we did our creative due diligence, so to speak. But
No,
um,
absolutely. I mean, I give, 110% to every project, whether it's a $200 million movie or a
yep.
$5 million movie. And as long as the checks cash, that's kind of all I really am happy with
Hey, there
anymore.
you go.
I mean,
Honestly,
there are projects that I do get excited about visually, um, whether it's the subject matter or the story or the talent that's in it. And then some jobs are just, jobs,
paychecks. Yeah.
and they're all just jobs. And
Right.
maybe that's where the jadedness comes in. I try to stay pretty grounded and humble, especially nowadays, and just kind of relish in the fact that I have a really cool job and it's an industry that so many people are fascinated by.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen it all. It's pretty crazy, and it's definitely not what people think it is.
Oh,
If
absolutely
that's
not. Yeah. They
so,
they don't
yeah,
understand the 16-hour days in some sub-zero temperature doing
yeah,
overnights or something and like
yeah.
having a
Oh,
2-hour
for
commute to set.
sure. Yeah.
And like let's talk about that for a second. Where has been your like craziest location?
Oh, craziest location. I mean, there's been a lot of them. I mean, probably the most difficult is probably New Mexico.
Really?
I did
Cold night.
it's just cold everything. I did a Western there last year. Um, Probably the most visually rewarding project I've ever done because
Mm.
I always wanted to do a Western. Um, but the hardest for sure. I mean, in New Mexico's weather is just gnarly. We'd have all four seasons in one day.
Ooh.
So, I mean, I remember one day particularly, we were shooting outside Santa Fe. I woke up in the morning and everything was covered in snow. And so I'm like, well, shit, how do I dress? So long johns, bundled up, got in the
Yep.
car. And as you're driving down the highway, the snow turned to rain, which turned to mist, which then kind of let up. And by the time I got to set, it was sunny and 70 degrees.
Ooh, and you're just rocking
Yeah,
it in long john.
yeah. So this is why we keep a weather bag on the camera truck full of
Yep.
everything because we all basically dress the same. So we just changed,
Yep.
into shorts or whatever. But it was just really tough to terrain wise, like
Mm.
logistically, mountains, forests, streams, deserts. My gear just got annihilated with dust and smoke.
Mm.
It was really tough. Yeah.
Let's talk about gear. Are you who are you repping? Canon, Nikon, Sony? Who's your guy?
Always been a Canon shooter.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I did Fuji for a minute
Fair.
for a couple reasons. Because first of all, Canon really hadn't jumped into the mirrorless game with anything that I thought was good enough to use on set. I think they had the R might have been their first mirrorless, and I tested it, and it just didn't do what I needed it to do. So I had all of my Canon gear, but I went to Fuji. There was a Northwest rep at Fuji who was really interested in unit photography, so he was just kind of handing out discounts to all of us unit photographers. So you know, I was getting like 40% off of everything, and Fuji's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not as expensive as Canon or Nikon gear. So yeah, I tried it on a couple films, and it was a great system. It's just not. It's not what I wanted to keep shooting. Fair. With. So finally,
so what are you shooting on? What's your current rig?
R5s. Yeah, I have R5s and R6s with all RF lenses.
Did you see the new Canon drop? They're coming out with the R Mark II, and I think it's like the R something. They like literally like probably a week ago they dropped that they're bringing a new R series into the world again.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's the R1 and the R3, and there's a R6 second generation.
Something like that.
I'm really I milk my gear as long as I can. I'm just that guy, not because I'm cheap, but there's nothing wrong until there's a body that just blows away what I'm using as far as functions and things like that. I'll beat my bodies into the ground as long as my lenses are in good shape. You know, I take care of my glass, and the R series will be good on any mount moving forward with Canon.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll probably try to squeeze another year or so out of the R5s. You know,
dude, I just Canon. For me, it's all about the colors for some reason, and I like what they give out in camera. It makes obviously our back end a lot easier, but
I agree.
It's just one of those things. But
yeah, I always like their color science, and just the user friendliness of it. They're such simple cameras.
Yep.
Not simple. I mean, just to operate, you know, I know where all the dials and the toggles, and they're pretty much the same on all the bodies in the last 20 years.
And I feel like it makes sense in the way that you hold a camera. I feel like the buttons and the things that I need to be in the accessible areas are like right there. Yeah. So I've always been definitely I mean, back to my AE1 when I was shooting on film, I still loved a good Canon.
Yeah. Sure.
But let's go to something that I think is really cool. So you had or have some work that's up in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. So talk me through how that happened. Obviously, it was for the Black Panther film. But talk me through when you heard that was going to be a thing. Was it exciting, or has that kind of excitement of having your work out in the world in that way kind of faded through time? Because
it's definitely faded. I don't know if it's still up in there. I never went and saw it. I mean, I think it is. I mean, first of all, it was the first Black Panther, and it was it was a really special project. I'd done a couple I'd worked with Chadwick before. And you just kind of knew that this was hitting differently than any other Marvel movie. But timing is everything for a film. Yep. And I think what was going on politically and socially, it just hit at the right time. You know, if it had come out 6 months later or earlier, then it might not have done as well. And so there was just a big push behind it. You know, people were really embracing that there was an African-American superhero, and he was cool. And the costumes were amazing. The sets were amazing. The props, everything was really cool on that. And, you know, I think there was 20 of my photographs that they put up in the Smithsonian, along with costumes and props and things like that. as
Did you
far
get a
as
heads up at all, or did the studio just say
shit,
like, "Oh,
I
hey,
never
by the
know.
way"?
I never know. Like I'm the last guy to find out where my images are at. I'll have friends that'll shoot me a photo of a billboard. Hey, is that yours? I'm like, oh yeah. When that come out? Oh, that's been up for weeks. I'm like, I never find out. So
So one thing again for people who don't know, when us still photographers, when we go on set and we take photos on set, the studio and the overlords, if you will, own them completely outright. We have no ownership whatsoever. They can put it on merch and sell the merch for $400 and we don't see a dime. It's just kind
yeah,
of the belly of the beast, how it is
yeah,
being a still photographer. I know
yeah.
for me personally, I used to get so upset and jaded when these beautiful posters would drop and the photographers weren't tagged. And I remember I reached out to Hopper Stone, who is at one point he was the
Yeah,
president
president. Yeah,
and of the SMPSP, which stands
yeah,
for Society of Motion Picture Still Photographers, which is a feat in of itself, which you joined in 2018. But I reached out to Hopper and I'm like, doesn't this get you fired? I'm like, they didn't even tag you. They're not even like giving your work, like saying you took the photo and it's just this beautiful picture and no one knows you took it. He goes, no one ever knows that we take those photos. Like,
yeah.
it's just
No,
not a thing. It's
yeah. I
not.
mean, you have to get over that. I mean, it's exciting. Like I still get excited to see posters or billboards or wherever the image is. And back to the Smithsonian, that was really cool as a photographer because that's kind of like the coolest place to have your images.
Yeah.
But as far as credit, yeah, obviously we're never going to get credit for posters. I mean, we get photo credit for a lot of stuff most of the time. It depends. Sometimes you don't. But back to kind of what Hopper was saying, we probably shoot images that are seen worldwide more than any other photographer, and just people just don't know. They don't know who took them, and they never will.
Do you
And
think
it's
it's
okay.
something that needs to change, or is it just like it is what it is?
I think it is. It is what it is. Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, I think nowadays, just with social media, and I mean, there's so much photography that people are bombarded with, like every day on the constant, like. And it's kind of like flavor of the month or the week, like whoever's doing the coolest thing. Like there's an image that's came out yesterday, I think, of this surfer in the Olympics.
Oh
like,
yeah, Medina.
And it's the raddest photo. Yeah. But so that guy's gonna be like super hot with that image for probably a week, and then people will move on to whatever's next. And
there's just so much content out there. And I mean, shit, we take how many photos on a set, and how many of them see the light of day? I mean, at the end of a day, a full 16-hour day, my shutter count's like maybe even reaching 700-800.
Really? You shoot that much? Huh?
Oh dude, because like I'm still like, I am obsessed with like crew portraiture and like the real BTS stuff and it's so funny because for the longest time production companies were like, we don't need crew BTS, like we just want movie BTS actors, no crew. And then about like right before I got pregnant on like my last gigs, producers were like, yeah, get more of the crew, like show the teamwork and whatnot. But then my shutter counts would be high, and like maybe 4 to 10 of those photos of that day actually like make it through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more conservative in the amount that I shoot. I try to keep it to like a couple hundred a day. I mean, I've had days where I've only shot 50 or 75 photos. But that's just me and just how I work over time.
And it makes your back end hella easy.
Well, there's that too, but you also learn that, especially on bigger projects, like photo editors are never going to look through all of that stuff.
Oh, that's right.
They're just not going to do it.
So like, talk about that workflow though, of you take because like I've always done indies and smaller things. So when you're getting into that big world, you take the photos and then send it to the photo editor, because also you're on a lot of green screen, so they have to do a lot of work. So what's that process?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. There is green screen, but it's not as much as everybody thinks. So like all the Star Wars series, Kenobi, and then I did a new one that's coming out called Skeleton Crew. There wasn't that much green screen, and even on Marvel, we have certain setups, but they try to build a lot of practical sets, and you just shoot around it. So like. The last Marvel, one of the last ones I did was Spider-Man No Way Home. And so as far as workflow, that film, like shooting schedule was like close to 7 months. So it was a good run. And I think I shot in the ballpark about 20,000 photos on that.
Wow.
Which isn't, I don't know, over 7 months, it's not a lot,
Yeah.
but
Fair.
I think maybe 10 were released, 10 photos. So you just have to, like, you weigh it out. So, like, I know what they need. So there's BTS, there's a production stills, there's props, there's sets, there's, costumes, there's the crew photos, all of that. But my workflow is I'll create a selects folder for each week, and which I feel are like the best 30 images for that week. And that's kind of what I push forward to the photo editor and say, hey, these are the best, whether the filmmakers are into it too. Sometimes, I'll share with them if they're interested. So we'll tag those. And those are the best ones for every week is what I push forward to the photo editors. And a lot of times they're into it. They like them as well. But then if they need to dig deeper because they're looking for something specific, then they can dive into all the other coverage. But it's been my experience that they just don't want to. Who wants to look through 20,000 images, even though they probably have like a year to do it before the movie's released.
True.
But in that process, they're already, if they have their stuff together, they're already kind of building an ad campaign and a marketing idea for how they want to do that, and what images they want to release for a first look, or, what they're going to give to the press. So it's kind of built in. So if they, out of 20,000 images, you've given them 300 of what you think are the best images, that's what they're going to look into. And that's super manageable to look into that amount of imagery.
Yeah, especially when you have that long.
Yeah. And that's kind of my workflow. But I do shoot everything. So, we'll set aside days to shoot props. Or if I have time to wander over, they're doing a show and tell, I'll shoot them on the table or a seamless or something like that. I'll shoot all the sets when they're empty, shoot them when they're rigging them. I'll shoot the sets when they're building them. It's all really important for like department heads, like production designer and art directors, and they love that stuff for their portfolios too, so it's great to show the process of the sets being built.
And like one thing the one thing I will always say is like, the one thing about the film industry is that we could literally build cities in a span of a week. And like, to me, that is the magic of the film industry, because we do what we do on such an incredibly accelerated and stressful, like condensed schedule. Like someone will build a house and it will take them 3 months. We'll build a house or a cabin that's a set and has most functionality of a real house, but inside of a week with these amazing set builders. And like, I love that part of the industry, but also on the reverse side, the industry right now is in complete chaos and bordering and teetering on the edge of not even being in existence in the United States much anymore, because we got hit with COVID. After COVID, we had the strike. Now it's going out of town, and it's just a whole different beast. So when you started out as a film loader, can you have anticipated where like this would have been now? Like when you first started, did you think that it would just kind of stay at that level, or did you kind of see hints like, this probably will go this way?
It's really hard, in retrospect, to go back and look at that,
Fair.
Certainly when I started, Los Angeles was booming. It was one of the major production cities still in the world. And it's no longer is, so there was tons of work, but at the same time, in the late 90s, there was runaway production is what they were calling it. And everything was going to Canada. So it's always been going somewhere else, even when I was there. So there was a ton of work in Canada, but LA was still like, there was no shortage of work. Right. I never was not working. Yeah. You had to schedule time off, if you wanted to go on vacation or something like that. And then after the Canadian boom kind of slowed down, then it was New Orleans or Detroit. And then Atlanta became a big production city. And then, they've always been making movies in London. The UK has always had a huge film community. So there was always work there. They were just chasing the dollar. The studios were going wherever it was cheapest to make movies. And it wasn't Los Angeles anymore. We didn't have tax incentives when we should have, and all the work split. I mean, not all the work. There was still plenty of work.
Right.
It just wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there was a shift to where you weren't seeing like the big projects. You'd get like a couple big projects a year in LA. Maybe 5 big movies or something. And there was always a television presence here. Yeah, it's always been going somewhere. But back then, the bigger difference back then is a lot of times a lot of us could go with them.
Yeah.
But now there's so many crews based in every part of the world that they shoot.
They could just hire locally.
And then they do. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of times they don't care whether the person's good or experienced or anything. It's just their zip code, where they live.
Yep.
Okay, you live there? Cool, we'll hire you.
You're done. Yeah. Right now we have, it's funny, we're living in a little bit of a Taylor Sheridan land out here in Texas because he has moved all of his productions to Texas, which is great. But also it would be more great if I was still in the union. But after I got pregnant, I didn't really understand the union enough to understand that you could take a pause on dues. So I ended up just not paying my dues because I'm like, well, I'm pregnant. I'm not going to work. And I just didn't have the information I needed. But they hired it was a unit that they had just joined the local, and he's done two features, but mostly commercial work. And he was getting jobs like this, and it's like there's no body of work, no shade to him, but it was just like, oh, you're union, cool. You live in Dallas, cool. You're done. You're hired. And then the crews, because like I said, they came from some locations. Those people didn't get to go with them, so it was just, oh, we're new place, new talent, new local, which like great, giving everybody a chance. But I feel like there's less loyalty in the industry nowadays because there are so many options. But I mean, that's also social media. It's like social media and having that bigger pool to pull from. It's kind of just one of those things.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's ever been any loyalty in this business. But
that's totally fair.
But I do think it comes down to numbers. It's all about, it's unfortunate because I've lost a lot of jobs over the last 5 years to people that had zero experience or maybe a couple credits.
Yeah.
But they lived in Atlanta, for example, where, the production in the studio doesn't have to pay to travel me, to put me up, to give me a rental car, per diem, all of the perks of being on location. They don't have to pay that to that person. But then again,
I mean, you could always come in and join the indie film squad where they won't give you a per diem regardless, and you can just
well, I mean, I'm open to anything at this point, but
so when you were a film loader and then you became a camera assistant, how did still photography be where you ended up and stayed and landed?
So I've always been into photography. I was shooting in middle school. My mom was a hobbyist. She shot a lot of portraits and landscapes. And so I first picked up a camera in middle school, and I was a big skateboarder for 20 plus years. So I was skating. That was kind of like my thing. I think when end of high school, when I realized I wasn't going to be a pro skater, I was like, shit, let's just shoot it. So that was just kind of fun for me. And then I kind of got into surf photography. And so I was doing that while I was a camera assistant. And I think I just had like a midlife crisis or something. And I'm like, I like being in the camera department. I like the technical aspect of it, but I'm more of a creative person. And so I wanted to kind of, can we pause for a sec?
Yeah,
I got a dog that's trying to get out of the house.
Go for it.
Okay, sorry.
No,
he's like scratching. He's scratching at the door. I'm like, okay. Oh, nobody else is around.
What kind of dog you have? What's his name?
He's a pity mix. His name is Enzo.
Oh, cute boy.
He's a sweet boy.
So midlife crisis.
Well, I don't even know if it was that, but I think at that point I'd been assisting for like almost 13 years.
Wow.
And I was like, I want to do something different. So I actually thought about getting on the business. I had friends that were surf photographers, and I knew some people in that industry. And so I started to look into that. And at that point, there just wasn't a lot of money in it. It was kind of a young person's game. They wanted they wanted somebody in their 20s that could travel with the athletes and shoot for like no money. You know? And I had 2 kids and a family at that point. And so then I just kind of, I'd always been friends with the still photographers on the movies that I did as an assistant. So I reached out to a couple of them, and a couple of them were kind of like, fuck you, I'm not telling you anything, like very, very protective. And then a couple of them are really cool, and it's funny, the ones that were kind of assholes and really protective, I get it. I know why, because you're a threat. You're a new photographer. I was already in the union, so it wasn't a matter of like waiting to join the union. And the best part of that is, I ended up taking jobs from them anyways at some point. So, and I know who they are, and I'll never forget them being that way. And I don't know. Yeah. So that's kind of
the first movie I did where they hired like a second, and in my head I was like, oh well, if you're gonna hire me like an assistant or like a second, like shouldn't I be involved? No, I had no idea who this guy was. Thank God we clicked like right away. But like there was that like moment of like, do I tell him like my color settings or like what I'm doing, because I want the pictures to all look cohesive and awesome, because Proud, specifically this one movie, the director was a good friend of mine, so I just wanted everything to look good, and we were all doing our own editing because it was an indie, so we're doing gallery plus everything, or I was doing gallery at the time, and I was teaching him how to do gallery because he was relatively new into the industry. And like at first I was like real standoffish the first couple of days, like, I'm the top photographer. I'm not telling you anything. You have to learn the way that I learned. And then by the end of it, like he was like really helpful. And like, I finally understood like, oh wow, actually, if we're doing like a blood gag where like I can't be in 2 places at once, and I know we're only doing it one time because we don't have enough prosthetics to do it too. Oh wow, I could have him over here on a long lens and I'll be over here. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually kind of helpful. But there was that weird, like, I didn't know how to handle it because, like you said, there aren't a lot of us in general, and there's only usually one like main still photographer on a set, and so it's like, am I just serving this guy up to replace me because he lives in the location where this movie was filmed, and now anytime this director goes back there, that he's going to want him because it's easier and he doesn't have to travel? Or do I just like, good vibes, let's do it. And if I lose out, whatever. I'm sure there'll be something else. So I have definitely been there. And it's definitely a weird, like there's no other industry in the world that you have to really worry about somebody taking your job so quickly. And I would say definitely that is the downfall of the film industry, is like they don't care if your kid's sick. They don't care if you're sick. If you have to miss a week and the guy who comes in happens to do like one good thing better than you, they might not call you back. And that's just what the industry is. And again, it's like people idealist, like they have this idea of the industry that it's so glamorous. It's like, we don't get holidays, we don't get PTO. Like, if you're in the union, you're a lot more protected, but like on the most part, like like when my husband came home and he had just got a new job, and he goes, and they gave me like 300 hours PTO. And so I was kind of trying to get some more. And I'm like, I'm sorry, they're paying you for 300 hours and you don't actually have to go into work, and you can't get fired for taking that time. Like,
I know, it's crazy. Like, I don't think our union had paternity leave for fathers when I first started, and now they do. And I was like, oh shit. Well, okay.
Well, one thing I found out in my last interview was SAG doesn't have any maternity leave, anything. The DGA has paternity leave. But SAG, they're just kind of left in the wind. But that's brutal because they're also on camera too. So I mean, there's like a whole bunch to that. But so talk to me about now, like, I've transitioned out of the industry, and it was a brutal one because not exactly planning on getting pregnant. And it felt like as soon as I got pregnant, I knew I couldn't do those days. I knew I can't do location jumping. I knew I couldn't be in this industry anymore. So it felt,
Yeah.
and like, not to get too down, it felt.
Sorry. Oh my God. Hey, guy. Hey. They're
It
nuts.
literally,
I'm sorry.
no, it's fine. It literally, we got 2 dogs, 10 horses in the back. I'm used to it. But it literally felt like my entire, like, me trying to get into the industry. And, you know, I've been doing it since I was like 16 years old with my first job in the industry. And like, it felt like it was all for nothing. And I had a really hard time, also pregnant. So hormones and mood swings, but it was a really shitty time because it felt like, you know, well, crap. But then I came it out the other side and I started the podcast and the creative business and whatnot. So if you were, you know, since the industry is the industry right now, where are you thinking about taking your skills? Because they are world class and like you can go a couple different directions. Where are you kind of thinking you want to kind of lean into?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hard question.
It is a hard question because I would like to keep doing this, and I am. You know, just the last couple years have been weird. I mean, It's probably been the slowest I've ever been, but obviously because of post-COVID, you know, and the strikes. The strikes, the threat of another strike, which thankfully we avoided, but that's not happening. But it's kind of like the damage is done. You know, like you were saying, a lot of the work has just gone overseas. But then the other part of it too is that all the studios and streamers, they've cut back like at least 30% on the content that they're making. Because I think a lot of them are broke or they're not doing as well as they lead on to be. So they're going to be very more selective in the projects. And I would like to think I'm still in the level, you know, of, you know, high functioning films and series that I will still get called. So when the phone completely stops ringing, then I'll really start thinking about what to do. But you know, I have, but here's the funny thing, like at least here in California, like, you know, the last year, you know, I probably, you know, had close to 10 months off, you know, like I've only worked probably 3 months in the last 13 months, which is just crazy. Like I've never had that ever. And I've looked at other types of photography, and it's either they're paying like $17 an hour or I'm overqualified.
Yeah.
You know,
have
so
you ever
there was
thought of doing something yourself though? Because like you have such an insane talent that, you know, doing a show of anything that the studios will, like basically what this is Smithsonian did. But I mean, you might have to go through some things, but also you have that ability to pick photography back up, not as a job, but as a hobby and, you know, sell prints or do shows. Or has that ever interested you at all?
Well, I can't sell prints. I can't sell anything that I've shot for the studios. You know, they own everything.
But you know, your surf photography or just picking the stuff up that when you said when you were younger and, you know, finding those, because like for me, it took me a while, and honestly having my baby, to start picking up my camera again and shooting for fun. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, that's actually really beautiful. And especially with social media in the world, I could probably throw it up on the website and charge $20 for, you know, an 8x10. Like there's that world of it. Have you ever thought about just doing that, even if it's on the side or even parallel to getting back into the industry and whatnot?
I have a little bit. I just haven't found, I don't know, the thing that excites me to shoot for money outside of the film industry. And what I was going to say earlier is like, there's such a, photography has been so devalued in the last 10 years that finding clients that want to actually pay a good rate for good photography, and social media is completely to blame for that. There's so many 100%. People that think they're photographers that aren't photographers, or that, you know, and iPhones, you know, or any smartphone can shoot well, and it's great for social media, you know, but
doesn't make you a photographer though. Let's be just straight up with that, because that is one of my biggest pet peeves, man.
But it's
it's
just
brutal.
Yeah, it's just kind of, like I said, so there's no it's hard to find those clients that want to pay, you know. And
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to make a really good living doing what I do and pretty good money. I mean, so that's part's really hard for me to find something that will pay, because I could, even if I only work half of the year, I don't have to work the other half of the year usually, you know. So yeah, I don't know, it's tough. I think I could get into like maybe brand photography or product photography. I did some of that.
Less fulfilling creatively, but I feel like there was a part of me that just kind of let that go, just kind of like, all right, like I'll take the best goddamn picture of this vacuum you've ever seen.
Sure,
it's a fucking vacuum. Who wants to be taking pictures of vacuums? But god damn it, this vacuum's gonna look good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I've lit like big movie stars and things like that, and it would be kind of a no-brainer, but it's just but there's also like this really stubborn part of my personality that's like, you know what, I've put 27 years into this business, I gotta fucking get through it. You know. I mean, I'm nowhere
sure
near I'm nowhere near ready to retire, and but if I can, squeeze another, I hate to say it, but 10 years out of this business, I would be happy to do that. But
I mean, I personally don't. I mean, I know other still photographers, and I'm not saying they're terrible, but God, there's something about your portraits and your work with, it is amazing and one of my favorites. And it really, and it's something that when I was looking into, I think that I always had this idea that still photographers had to be like, they were like, camera crew is always very, very technical. Like everything is like perfect, and there's a lot of math, and like I think more in colors and shapes and whatnot. And, or like, I'm that very happy-go-lucky, bring a skateboard to set. Like, I just, finding you, Darren was the one who first like brought you into my view line through Instagram and whatnot. But like finding someone who I felt was also kind of a very similar person doing this amazing work. Like you absolutely were one of like, I'm going to get here now, probably never going to get there, but I've kind of accepted that. But still, it's like some of your work is just phenomenal. And it's also just exciting because it's just like, you're working at a level that maybe 2% of still photographers actually get to. Like,
I don't know. I mean, I thank you for the compliments. It's really, really flattering. But I just kind of like, I don't know. I just look at myself as just like a normal dude. I'm 52 years old. I still wear Vans. I'm just like I'm a skatehead, I'm a skater and I surfer. When I'm not working, I'm surfing every day. And it's just kind of like I've had friends that are like, oh, you're an artist, and I'm like, I've never looked at myself that way. And to me, like, I get where they're coming from, but to me, it just sounds, my mom was an artist, I've been a family of artists. All my kids are creative, but to me, it sounds super pretentious to call myself an artist.
Now, even if someone says, I'm a storyteller, I just cringe. Like, even though, like, yes, you are telling a story. Yes, we know you are doing it, but it's a hard thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you dig into it, I'm a storyteller as well, like all unit photographers are. But when they say, well, if you're not an artist, what are you? And I'm like, I don't know, a technician. Like I'm hired to do a job. Like I'm very creative, and that's how I think. From whether it was skateboarding or surfing or to photography, like you always thinking a certain way creatively, right? Like what can I do to that curb or that set of stairs, or how can I light this, or how can I capture this image on set? You just think differently. So I don't know. I've always related more to like blue collar type, like hard worker, have a good work ethic, But for me, it's just how I think and how I look at things on set, and I've had people tell me, oh, you have like a super easy job because you have Oscar-winning cinematographers lighting your sets for you. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. I have Oscar-winning cinematographers that are lighting the set, but they're not lighting the set for me. Mm-hmm. They're lighting the set for the cameras.
And you don't shoot on the same plane as the camera, because
yes, sometimes I do. Yeah, I do. But to me, the most exciting shots are the ones that are off axis from the camera, where the lighting is good, but it's different, and sometimes it won't work for what they're doing, but it works really well for me. Like maybe half the actor's in shadow, where he's completely lit for the cameras, but. And that's just kind of the fun part about being a unit photographer. As you know, mm-hmm. you have the autonomy to kind of walk around and do your own thing, and that in itself is really hard because you're trying to tell the same story that the filmmakers are, but you're trying to tell it in a single image as opposed to a moving image. Yes. But at the same time, staying true to the filmmaker's vision, but also catering to the studio, what the studio needs, because you mm-hmm. need to like toe that line, and pleasing everybody. And then the third leg of that is I'll go do something that I know neither one of them will use, but it looks cool to me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they do love it. I've had DPs come up to me. Like one of my favorite ones was on Spider-Man. Our DP was Mauro Fior, who's like an Oscar-winning DP, and he saw me shooting an angle of Tom Holland, and he came over and he looked over my shoulder, and he's like, "That's a great shot." He's like, "Did you get it?" And I'm like, "I got it." He's like, "Great, get out of the way. Bring the camera over here." And then they want to do it, And it ended up being one of the that shot ended up being one of the international posters. But the fact that. That's kind of cool,
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that he set up. It was something that I set up, that I found. So.
And also, I feel like, this has definitely been one of my biggest battles in the industry is the feeling like valid and like I have I am doing something different. Because like I feel like myself personally, I would get locked into those same like negative things of like, yeah, well, your job's easy. You call rap and you just pack up your thing and you get to go home. You don't have to pack the truck. You don't have to pre-light the next scene. You're just walking in, waltzing in, take a few pictures and then hide in the corner. And so like, I always like kind of had that loop in my head. And then every once in a while you would be like, yeah, no, I'm good at what I do. Like I am good. And like, this is, so like finding those, like, even if like, I'm just that positive reinforcement person when like somebody like an actor or a producer comes over and they're like, that's poster. I'm like,
yeah, no, it's definitely validating. And I get that. And I will say I'm very fortunate that like the projects that I work on, it's literally like everybody's operating at like the highest level.
Yeah.
So it's like I never walk on a set and somebody's like, oh, yeah, you just take pictures, like they know, like I'm there for a reason. They're there for a reason. Like we're all here for a reason, So to me, that's like one of the best part about working on those big budget things, whether they're good or not. Like you're working with the industry's best people from camera all the way down the chain, to production assistants. And
now you've won some awards and whatnot in the world of just like, or like nominations of excellence. Do you find that validating at all? Or are you a person, you're just like, I would rather take homeboy DP telling me I got a badass shot over an excellence award?
It's the same award. I won it. It's the excellence in like feature film photography. And it's something that our union does every year through their publicity, because publicists are in Local 600 as well.
Yep.
And it's just something they do to, acknowledge like the best publicity marketing campaigns for films or series. And so there's a category for best still photography for television and film. And I'll probably get in trouble, but it's totally a popularity contest. It's totally meaningless. Yeah. I got nominated for television one year and I'd never worked on a TV show. So it's just like
that's in the Oscars too. Like they're the best comedy series. And I'm like, this is not a comedy. So weird that it won.
It's just it's a weird thing. And the award, it's not based off of like your work for that year. I don't even know what it's based off of. Like, I guess just who publicists' favorite photographers to work with are, that kind of thing.
Yep. Who made their job easier?
Well, and it kind of really sunk in because the year that I won, the photos that I put up so that they could show on the, the wall or whatever were a couple from Spider-Man. And it was the same year that the publicity team from Sony won for best marketing campaign for Spider-Man. And it was all of my photos that were part of their marketing campaign. And what kind of really stuck with me is that whole marketing team won. And out of like 10 people, like one guy came over and congratulated me for winning, when their whole campaign was built off of my images.
Off of your work.
Yeah.
Still photographers. We are
it's just
world.
Yeah. I mean, and it maybe stung for a minute, but I was like, I don't care. I really don't care.
There's that one service level of like I remember I did this one and it was like a kitschy horror film, but it had a huge fan base following. Tom Lennon was the main actor and he was just killing it with the humor. It was absolutely hilarious. But then they turned some of my photos. First of all, they like bastardized it a little bit and made it like this weird cutout texture thing. And then all of a sudden I went to Hot Topic with a friend to get a gag gift. And I look up and there's my photo on it. And I'm just like, oh, cool. How much is that shirt? 25. Wow. Crazy. It's just, we're definitely in a unique position, but like, I do love the autonomy that it gives us. Cause like ultimately, if like at the end of the day, if somebody, if like the producer says, no, like we need this shot or like I need this or that, it's like, AD, get out of the way. Like, producer says we got to get this thing. And, it's just, just one person. You're easy to like fade in and out of the corners to get the cooler shots. You're in with the actors, so they give you that same kind of respect. And it's definitely a unique place. But oh, holy crap, we are already over 45 minutes. I have taken up a whole bunch of your time.
No, you're fine. I'm good. I'll keep talking.
See, like I'm telling you, because like it's rare that like as a still photographer, I've even got to. I think you and Hopper have been the only other still photographers that I have ever talked to. There's not like, a big group of us that like coexist. Like, yes, we have our union, but our union obviously represents like a bunch of other, camera assistants, DP, and there are all these different tiers.
Yeah.
We should have like a group fireside chat. But I say we, but I am no longer of that team anymore, which is, it's still a hard pill to swallow. I'm not going to lie. And I told all the local folks in the industry here in Texas, I'm like, but if you ever still need a gallery, I could do a gallery.
Yeah,
I won't do 12-hour days again, but a gallery, I got you.
Right. Where are you at in Texas? I don't even know. Are you in Austin?
No, I'm right in, I'm about like 20 minutes outside of Fort Worth. So, and Fort Worth is like 30 minutes outside of Dallas. Okay. So little bit of both. Right now, Fort Worth is definitely more of a hub than Dallas, mostly because of Taylor.
Right.
But I mean,
I have friends that are working out there. Lioness, I guess, is like
they just wrapped, and then they finished Landman, which is his new series. Okay. Lioness is currently filming, and then they're bringing down 1923-83, whatever number they're on. Yeah. that year one. And then they're also dude, he's literally for the next year there are like 6 shows that are planned in Fort Worth. And like Fort Worth is obviously super stoked because like home team, but also like, man, the sets are brutal and there's not that many crew members here in Texas. And when you're pulling, from your own productions, it starts getting a little crazy. So maybe you need to come down here.
Yeah, I mean, my sister and her family live in Austin, so I'd come to Texas. It wouldn't be too far.
We got horses. You could come ride some horses on your day off. But anyways, you've been gracious enough with your time, and I gotta go put beans down.
No worries.
But thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being so rad and so good at what you do, because you're definitely an inspiration.
Thank you.
That
was fun.
Keep me apprised of all your fun doings, and I'll be watching all your amazing work out there on billboards and all those crazy things.
We can hope. Let's hope so.
Here, fingers crossed. I got you. There you go. That's all we need.
Thank you. Awesome.
See you later, Matt.
Okay, take